Maria Santos looked at her reflection in the restaurant's bathroom mirror. Her black uniform was clean and pressed. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She looked like any other waitress getting ready for another long shift. But Maria was not like other waitresses. She had a secret that none of her coworkers knew about. 2 years ago, Maria had been a different person. She wore beautiful dresses and played piano on big stages. She had graduated from the best music school in the city. Her teachers said she was one of the most talented students they had ever seen. They told her she would become famous one day. They said her name would be on concert posters all over the world, but life had other plans for Maria. Her father got very sick. The doctor said he needed expensive treatment right away. Maria's family did not have money for the medical bills. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it was not enough. Maria had to make a choice. She could follow her dreams or help save her father's life. The choice was easy. Maria sold her good piano. She took the money she had saved for her first concert tour. She gave up her small apartment near the music school. She moved back home and started looking for any job that would pay enough to help with the bills. That was how she ended up at the Grand Palazzo restaurant. The Grand Palazzo was not like the places Maria usually ate. It was fancy and expensive. The tables had white cloth and real silver. The wine cost more than most people made in a week. Rich people came here to eat and talk about their money. They wore designer clothes and expensive jewelry. They talked loudly about their vacation homes and their new cars. Maria served these people every day. She brought them their food and filled their wine glasses. She smiled and said, "Yes, sir," and "Yes, ma'am," even when they were rude to her. She cleaned up their messes and pretended not to hear. When they complained about the service being too slow, the hardest part was the piano. In the corner of the main dining room sat a beautiful black piano. It was a Steinway Grand, the same kind Maria had dreamed of owning someday. Every day she walked past it dozens of times. She could see her reflection in its shiny surface. Sometimes late at night, when she was cleaning tables, she would stop and look at the keys. Her fingers would move slightly, playing silent songs that only she could hear. The piano was used only on special nights. A professional pianist would come and play soft music while the rich guests ate their expensive meals. Maria always volunteered to work those nights. She would find excuses to walk near the piano. She would listen to every note and remember how it felt to make that kind of music herself. The pianist who usually played was an older man named Robert. He was good, but Maria could hear mistakes that others missed. She noticed when he played too fast or when he hit a wrong note. Sometimes she wanted to walk over and show him the right way to play a difficult part, but she never did. She was just a waitress now. Maria's own piano sat in her tiny apartment collecting dust. It was an old upright piano that her grandmother had given her. It was not fancy like the Steinway at the restaurant, but it had been her best friend for many years. Now she barely had time to play it. After working double shifts at the restaurant, she was too tired to do anything but sleep. Her apartment was small and cheap. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbors arguing. The heat did not work well in winter. Sometimes the water stopped running, but it was what she could afford while helping her family pay the medical bills. Every morning Maria woke up and looked at her piano. She would touch the keys softly and play a few notes. Then she would close the lid and get ready for another day of serving people who had everything she had lost. Her coworkers at the restaurant were nice enough. They did not know about her music background. To them, she was just Maria the waitress, who worked hard and never complained. She made friends with some of them, but she never told them about her real dreams. It hurt too much to talk about what she used to be. Sometimes customers would ask her about herself. They would wonder why a smart girl like her was working as a waitress. Maria would just smile and say she was saving money for school. It was easier than explaining the truth. It was easier than telling them that she had already been to the best school. But life had pulled her away from everything she loved. The manager of the restaurant was a man named James Crawford. He was usually stressed and always worried about making the rich customers happy. He was not mean to Maria, but he did not really see her either. To him, she was just another employee who did her job and did not cause trouble. Maria had been working at the Grand Palazzo for almost 2 years now. Her father was getting better, but slowly. The medical bills were still coming. Her mother was still working 2 jobs. Maria's piano skills were getting rusty from not playing enough. Sometimes she felt like she was losing herself a little more each day, but she kept going. Every morning she put on her black uniform. Every day she walked past the beautiful Steinway. Piano. Every night she went home to her small apartment and looked at her old piano. She told herself that this was temporary. She told herself that someday she would play music again. She did not know that someday was coming very soon, late at night. After the last customer had left and the other waitresses had gone home, Maria would sometimes stay behind to finish cleaning. The restaurant was quiet then. The only sounds were the dishwasher running in the kitchen and her footsteps on the marble floor. On these quiet nights, Maria would allow herself to really look at the piano. She would stand close to it and remember what it felt like to perform. She would think about the concerts she used to give when she was in music school. She would remember the feeling of the audience listening to every note she played. Those memories hurt, but they also gave her hope. Deep down, Maria knew that the music was still inside her. It was waiting for the right moment to come out again. She just did not know when that moment would come. Maria thought she would be a waitress forever. She thought her dreams of playing piano were over. She had no way of knowing that in just a few days everything would change. She had no idea that the skills she thought she had lost would soon make her the most talked about person in the city. For now, she was just Maria, the waitress, but soon she would be much more than that. Friday morning started like any other day at the Grand Palazzo. Maria arrived early to help set up for what would be the biggest event of the year. Tonight was the annual charity gala for the Children's Hospital Foundation. The richest people in the city would come to eat, drink expensive wine, and write big checks for charity. Maria had worked many fancy events before, but tonight was different. The guest list included names she had seen in magazines and newspapers. Tech billionaires, oil company owners, real estate moguls, and movie stars would all be sitting at the table she would serve. The most important guest was Victoria Ashford. Everyone knew her name. She had started a computer company in her garage 20 years ago and built it into one of the biggest tech companies in the world. She was worth billions of dollars. More than that, she was known for helping young artists and musicians. Her foundation gave money to music schools and paid for concerts in poor neighborhoods. Victoria Ashford was hosting tonight's event. If she was happy with the evening, the Grand Palazzo would get more big events. If she was not happy, the restaurant's reputation would be ruined. James Crawford, the manager, was more nervous than Maria had ever seen him. He had been checking and double-checking everything all week. The flowers had to be perfect. The wine had to be the best. The food had to be amazing. And the music had to be elegant and beautiful. For the music, Crawford had hired Robert Whitman, the most expensive pianist in the city. Robert charged $5,000 just to play for 3 hours. He was famous for playing at embassy parties and movie premieres. His music had been featured in films and television shows. Maria was setting up tables when she heard Crawford's phone ring. She could tell from his voice that something was wrong. "What do you mean you're sick?" Crawford was almost shouting into the phone. "This is the most important night of the year. You can't be sick." Maria moved closer, pretending to arrange flowers. While she listened, "Food poisoning? How bad?" Crawford's face was getting red. "The doctor said what? You can't even sit up?" "Robert, I have 50 of the richest people in the city coming here in 6 hours. Crawford hung up the phone and put his head in his hands. Maria had never seen him look so defeated. "What happened?" asked Sarah, one of the other waitresses. "Robert Whitman is sick. Really sick. He can't perform tonight." Crawford looked like he might cry. "Do you know how hard it is to find a good pianist on 6 hours' notice? Especially one who can play for people like Victoria Ashford?" Crawford started making phone calls. He called every music agency in the city. He called the music school. He even called wedding planners to see if they knew any pianists who might be available. every call was the same. Either the pianist was already booked for Friday night, or they wanted too much money, or they were not good enough for such an important event. Maria listened to Crawford make call after call. With each no he received, he looked more worried. The other staff members were starting to panic too. Everyone knew how important tonight was. "Maybe we can just play recorded music?" suggested Tom, one of the waiters. Recorded music? At a $5,000 a plate charity gala? With Victoria Ashford? Crawford shook his head. She specifically requested live piano music. Her foundation is all about supporting live musicians and artists. Maria's heart was beating fast. She knew she could help, but she was scared to speak up. What if she offered and Crawford laughed at her? What if she tried to play and made mistakes? She could lose her job, but as she watched Crawford make more unsuccessful phone calls, Maria realized he was running out of options. The guests would start arriving in just a few hours. There was no time to find a professional pianist. Maria thought about her father in the hospital. She thought about the medical bills her family still owed. She thought about her old piano sitting silent in her apartment. Most of all, she thought about the beautiful Steinway piano that she walked past every day but never got to touch. "Mr. Crawford?" Maria's voice was quiet and shaky. "Not now, Maria. I'm trying to save this whole event." Crawford did not even look up from his phone. "Mr. Crawford, I might be able to help." Now Crawford looked at her. His expression was not hopeful. "Maria, I need a professional pianist, not someone who took piano lessons in high school." Maria took a deep breath. "I graduated from the Conservatory of Music. I have a degree in piano performance." The restaurant suddenly became very quiet. All the staff members stopped what they were doing and stared at Maria. Crawford put down his phone. "You what?" Crawford looked confused. "I studied piano for 8 years at the conservatory. I graduated 2 years ago with highest honors. I was trained to perform in concerts and recitals." Maria's voice was getting stronger as she spoke. "Then why are you working here as a waitress?" Crawford asked. Maria explained about her father's illness and the medical bills. She told him how she had to give up her music career to help her family. She had been planning to go back to music someday, but for now, she needed the steady pay from waitressing. Crawford listened carefully. Maria could see him thinking, weighing his options. "Maria, this is not a small coffee shop performance. These are some of the most powerful people in the world. If you make mistakes, it could ruin the whole evening. It could ruin my career." "I understand," Maria said. "But you don't have any other choices, do you?" Crawford looked at his phone, where he had tried calling 20 different musicians. He looked at the clock on the wall. 4 hours until the first guests arrived. "Can you play classical music? Chopin, Beethoven, that kind of thing?" Maria nodded. "I specialized in classical and romantic period composers. Chopin is actually my favorite. What about jazz? Can you play background music that won't be too loud or attention-grabbing?" "Yes, I can play anything you need." Crawford was quiet for a long moment. The other staff members watched nervously. Everyone knew that the success of the evening depended on his decision. "If I let you do this, and you mess up, you're fired immediately. Do you understand?" Maria nodded. "I understand. And if you do well, we'll talk about making this a regular part of your job. Deal?" Crawford shook Maria's hand. "Go home and practice. Be back here at 5 o'clock sharp. Wear something nice, not your waitress uniform. And Maria?" "Yes?" "Don't make me regret this." Maria rushed home to her small apartment. She had not played seriously in months, but her fingers still remembered the music. She spent 2 hours practicing on her old piano, playing the pieces she knew would be perfect for tonight. As she practiced, Maria felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like herself again. She felt like a musician instead of just a waitress. In a few hours, she would sit at the beautiful Steinway piano she had admired for 2 years. She would play for the richest and most powerful people in the city. She would have a chance to show the world who she really was. Maria did not know it yet, but this would be the night that changed everything. Maria stood in front of her small closet looking for something to wear. She owned only two nice dresses. One was black and simple, the kind of dress she wore to funerals and job interviews. The other was dark blue with small buttons up the front. It was the dress she had worn to her graduation from music school. She chose the blue dress. Tonight she would be a musician again. Not just a waitress filling in for someone else. Maria arrived at the Grand Palazzo at exactly 5 o'clock. The restaurant looked completely different than it did during her regular shifts. White flowers covered every table. Candles flickered in crystal holders. The lighting was soft and warm. Everything looked perfect for the most important night of the year. Crawford saw her walk in and did a double take. In her blue dress with her hair down, Maria looked like a completely different person. She looked like someone who belonged at a fancy charity gala, not someone who served food at one. "You clean up nice," Crawford said. "Are you ready for this?" Maria's hands were shaking slightly. "I think so. You think so?" "Maria, the first guests will be here in 30 minutes. Victoria. Ashford will be here in an hour. I need you to be sure." Maria walked over to the Steinway piano. For 2 years, she had only looked at it from a distance. Now she was going to play it. She lifted the lid and saw the beautiful black and white keys. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it to the right height. She placed her fingers on the keys and played a soft scale. The sound was incredible. The piano was perfectly tuned and the tone was rich and warm. It was so much better than her old piano at home. "It sounds beautiful," Maria said. "It should. We had it tuned yesterday specifically for tonight." Crawford checked his watch. 25 minutes. "What are you going to play first?" Maria had planned this carefully during her practice session at home. "I'll start with Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It's elegant but not too demanding. Perfect background music while people are arriving and ordering drinks. And after that? Debussy, some Bach, maybe some Schubert. I'll read the room and see what feels right." Crawford nodded. "Remember, these people are here to talk business and write charity checks. Your job is to create a nice atmosphere, not to be the center of attention." "I understand." The first guests began arriving at 5:30. Maria started playing the Chopin Nocturne softly, just as she had planned. The music filled the restaurant with an elegant, sophisticated sound. At first, everything went according to plan. The guests talked and laughed while Maria played in the background. Waiters moved smoothly between tables, serving wine and appetizers. Maria recognized some faces from newspapers and magazines, but she focused on her music and tried not to get distracted. Then Victoria Ashford arrived. Maria had seen pictures of Victoria in business magazines, but seeing her in person was different. She was tall and confident, with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than Maria made in a year. When she walked into the room, conversation stopped for a moment. Everyone wanted to shake her hand and get her attention. Victoria sat at the best table in the center of the restaurant. Maria could see her clearly from the piano. This was the woman who could change her life if the evening went well. Maria was in the middle of a gentle Debussy piece when she noticed something. The restaurant was getting louder. People were drinking more wine and talking about business deals. Some guests were even taking phone calls during dinner. This was not what Maria had expected. At the concerts she used to perform, the audience listened quietly and respectfully. Here, the music was just background noise while people conducted business. Maria felt disappointed but tried to stay professional. She continued playing soft, undemanding pieces that would not interfere with conversations. Then something happened that changed everything. A waiter carrying a tray of wine glasses tripped near Victoria Ashford's table. Glass crashed to the floor, and red wine splashed everywhere. The loud noise made everyone stop talking and look over. In the sudden silence that followed, Maria's music became the only sound in the room. She was playing Chopin's Ballade No. 1, a piece she had performed many times in music school. Without the noise of conversation, everyone could hear how beautiful her playing really was. Maria realized this was her moment. She could continue playing quietly and let the conversations resume. Or she could seize this opportunity to show what she could really do. She made her choice. Instead of stopping or returning to background music, Maria began to play with more passion and emotion. Her fingers moved faster across the keys. The melody became more dramatic and expressive. She was no longer just providing atmosphere. She was giving a performance. The cleanup of the spilled wine was finished quickly, but the conversations did not resume. People remained quiet, listening to Maria's music. Some guests turned their chairs to face the piano. Others put down their wine glasses and focused entirely on the sound. Maria could feel the energy in the room changing. The wealthy guests who had been ignoring her music were now paying attention. She saw Victoria Ashford lean forward in her chair, watching Maria's hands move across the keys. This was what Maria had been trained for. This was what she had dreamed about during all those months of serving tables and cleaning up other people's messes. She was finally able to show her true skill. She finished the Chopin Ballade and moved immediately into Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. This was a much more challenging piece, but Maria knew it perfectly. She had performed it for her final exam at music school and received a standing ovation. The Rachmaninoff piece was powerful and emotional. It required technical skill and deep musical understanding. As Maria played, she forgot about being nervous. She forgot about the wealthy audience and the pressure of the evening. She just focused on the music. The room was completely silent except for the piano. Even the waiters stopped moving to listen. Maria could see Crawford standing near the kitchen door with his mouth open in amazement. When Maria finished the Rachmaninoff, she paused for just a moment before beginning her next piece. In that moment of silence, she heard something that surprised her. Someone was crying. Maria looked over and saw that Victoria Ashford had tears in her eyes. The billionaire tech mogul, who was known for being tough and business-minded, was crying because of Maria's music. That was when Maria realized that this was not just a good performance. This was something special. This was the kind of music that touched people's hearts and changed their lives. She continued playing, choosing pieces that showed off different aspects of her skill. She played fast, technically difficult pieces and slow, emotionally moving ones. She played classical pieces that everyone recognized and more modern ones that showed her range. With each piece, Maria felt more confident and more like herself. She was no longer Maria the waitress who was filling in for someone else. She was Maria the pianist, sharing her gift with an audience that truly appreciated it. The evening was far from over, but Maria already knew that everything had changed. She had taken the biggest risk of her life, and it was paying off in ways she never could have imagined. As Maria continued to play, something magical happened in the Grand Palazzo. The usual sounds of a business dinner, clinking glasses, loud conversations, and ringing phones, gradually faded away. Instead, the room filled with an attention that Maria had never experienced before. Victoria Ashford was not the only person who had stopped everything to listen. At the table next to her, Richard Sterling, the owner of 3 major entertainment companies, had put down his phone mid-conversation. His business partner, who had been showing him profit reports on a tablet, closed the device and turned toward the piano. At another table, Margaret Chun, a real estate mogul who owned half the downtown skyline, had been discussing a $50 million development project. Now she sat with her hands folded, completely focused on Maria's performance. Maria moved from the Rachmaninoff into Debussy's Clair de Lune. This piece was softer and more dreamy than the dramatic Rachmaninoff, but it was equally beautiful. Her fingers moved gently across the keys, creating a sound that seemed to float through the air. As she played, Maria began to notice things she had never seen during her regular waitressing shifts. She saw how the wealthy guests' faces changed. When they really listened to music, their business expressions melted away, their guard came down. For these few minutes, they were not thinking about money or deals or power. They were just human beings experiencing something beautiful. An older man at table 12 wiped his eyes with his napkin. Maria recognized him from the business section of the newspaper. He was the CEO of the biggest bank in the state. She had never imagined that someone so powerful could be moved to tears by her music. A young woman who had inherited millions from her tech entrepreneur father was recording the performance on her phone, but she was not recording it to show off on social media. Maria could see that she was genuinely amazed by what she was hearing. Even the restaurant staff had stopped working to listen. Tom, one of the waiters, stood frozen with a tray of desserts in his hands. Sarah, who had worked at fancy restaurants for 10 years, later said she had never seen anything like it. Crawford, the manager, looked like he was in shock. He had hired Maria as a desperate last-minute replacement. He never expected her to turn his elegant charity dinner into something approaching a concert performance. Maria finished, cleared a lune, and moved into Bach's Goldberg Variations. This was some of the most complex piano music ever written. It required not just technical skill, but deep understanding of musical structure and emotion. As she played the intricate Bach variations, Maria felt herself entering a state she remembered from her best performances in music school. Time seemed to slow down. Her fingers moved without conscious thought. The music flowed through her as if it was coming from somewhere beyond herself. She was no longer nervous about making mistakes or worried about impressing the wealthy audience. She was simply doing what she was born to do, making music that touched people's souls. Victoria Ashford had moved her chair to face the piano directly. She was watching Maria's hands with the focus of someone who understood what she was seeing. Victoria had studied piano herself as a child, and she recognized master-level technique when she saw it. During a brief pause between Bach variations, Victoria leaned over to Richard Sterling and whispered, "Where did Crawford find her?" "She's extraordinary," Richard nodded. "I've heard concert pianists who aren't half this good. Who is she?" At that moment, neither Victoria nor Richard knew that the woman giving this incredible performance was the same person who had served them dinner just last month. To them, she was a mysterious musician who had appeared out of nowhere. Maria continued with the Bach, then transitioned into Chopin's Ballade No. 4. This piece told a story through music, starting quietly and building to a dramatic, passionate climax before returning to gentle beauty. As she played the climactic section of the ballade, Maria put all her emotion into the music. She thought about her father in the hospital and her mother working 2 jobs. She thought about the dreams she had given up and the piano at home that sat silent most days. She thought about all the nights she had walked past this beautiful Steinway, wishing she could play it. The emotion in her playing was so powerful that it affected everyone in the room. These were people who were used to getting whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. But Maria's music reminded them of things that money could not buy: beauty, passion, and the human spirit. A tech mogul who had not cried since his father's funeral found himself wiping away tears. A fashion designer who usually only cared about the next trend was completely absorbed in music written hundreds of years ago. Maria could feel the energy in the room building. The audience was not just listening politely anymore. They were experiencing something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. She decided to take an even bigger risk. Instead of continuing with classical pieces, she began to improvise. She took the melody from Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major and began to develop it in her own way. Adding her own harmonies and emotional interpretation, improvisation was something Maria had always been good at, but she had rarely done it in formal performances. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight felt like a night for taking chances. As she improvised, Maria created music that had never been heard before and would never be heard again in exactly the same way. She was composing in real time, drawing on all her years of training and all her recent experiences of struggle and hope. The improvisation was so beautiful and so personal that it felt like Maria was telling her life story through music. The wealthy audience, who were used to hearing polished, professional performances, were witnessing something raw and authentic. Victoria Ashford was now crying openly. She had built a billion-dollar company and been featured on magazine covers around the world, but she had never been moved like this by a musical performance. Richard Sterling was already thinking about recording contracts and concert tours. He could see that Maria was not just a talented pianist. She was an artist with something important to say. Other guests were taking out their phones, not to check messages or make business calls, but to record pieces of Maria's performance. They wanted to capture this moment so they could remember it later. As Maria's improvisation reached its conclusion, she brought the melody back to the original Chopin theme, but transformed by everything she had added to it. The final notes were soft and gentle, like a lullaby. When the last note faded away, the restaurant was completely silent. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke. The wealthy guests, who were used to being in control of every situation, were stunned by what they had just experienced. Then Victoria Ashford began to clap. Her applause was soon joined by everyone else in the restaurant. But this was not polite, social applause. This was the kind of enthusiastic, emotional applause usually heard in concert halls after masterful performances. Maria stood up from the piano bench, suddenly aware again of where she was and what had just happened. The faces looking back at her were no longer the faces of wealthy strangers. They were the faces of people who had been touched by her music. She had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. But she had no idea yet just how much this performance was about to change her life. The applause seemed to go on forever. Maria stood beside the piano, overwhelmed by the response to her performance. She had played in recitals during music school, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. These were not music students or professors clapping politely. These were some of the most successful people in the world, and they were giving her a standing ovation. Victoria Ashford was the first to approach the piano. The billionaire tech mogul walked over with tears still visible in her eyes. Maria felt nervous. She had served Victoria dinner before, but Victoria had never really noticed her. "That was absolutely incredible," Victoria said, her voice full of emotion. "I have heard some of the world's best pianists perform, but what you just did was something special." "What is your name?" "Maria Santos," Maria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maria, where did you study? Who was your teacher?" "I graduated from the Conservatory of Music 2 years ago." "I studied with Professor Williams." Victoria's eyes widened. "David Williams? He only takes the most gifted students." "You must be extraordinarily talented." She paused, studying Maria's face. "Wait a minute, have we met before? You look familiar." Maria felt her cheeks get hot. "I work here. I'm one of the waitresses. I served your table last month when you came for the business luncheon." Victoria stared at Maria in disbelief. "You're a waitress? But you play like a concert pianist." Before Maria could explain, Richard Sterling joined the conversation. He was a tall man with gray hair who owned several entertainment venues and record labels. Maria recognized him from business magazines. "Excuse me," Richard said to Victoria, then turned to Maria. "I'm Richard Sterling. That performance was absolutely stunning. Are you represented by an agent? Do you have a recording contract?" Maria shook her head. "No, I don't have either of those things." "Well, that's about to change." Richard pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. "I want to talk to you about performing at my venues. I also want to discuss recording opportunities. When can you come to my office?" More people began gathering around the piano. Margaret Chun, the real estate mogul, pushed through the small crowd. "Young lady, I organize cultural events for my company. We host concerts for our clients several times a year. I would love to have you perform for us." She handed Maria another business card. A man in an expensive suit introduced himself as the director of the city's symphony orchestra. "We're always looking for talented soloists," he said. "I would like you to audition for us next week." Maria's head was spinning. In the space of 10 minutes, she had gone from being a waitress filling in for a sick pianist to having multiple job offers from some of the most powerful people in the city, but the biggest surprise was yet to come. Victoria Ashford gently took Maria's arm and led her away from the crowd. "Maria, I need to tell you something. Next month, my foundation is hosting a gala to raise money for music education in poor schools. It's going to be the biggest charity event of the year. We're expecting 500 guests and hoping to raise over $1 million. Maria nodded, not sure where this was going. We had hired a famous pianist from New York to be our featured performer. We're paying him $50,000 for one evening. But after hearing you play tonight, I want to offer you that spot instead. Maria felt dizzy. $50,000 was more than she made in an entire year at the restaurant. But there's more, Victoria continued. I don't just want you to perform at the gala. I want to offer you a position with my foundation. We need someone to help us find and support young musicians who are struggling financially, just like you did. The salary would be $100,000 a year, plus benefits. Maria had to sit down. She found a chair at a nearby table and tried to process what Victoria was telling her. $100,000? Maria repeated. Plus, you would get to travel around the country, listening to young musicians and helping them get the support they need. You would also perform at our events and help us organize concerts. Victoria sat down next to Maria. I can see that you're not just talented, you're someone who understands what it's like to struggle for your art. That's exactly what we need. Crawford, the restaurant manager, had been watching this conversation from across the room. He walked over, looking somewhat sheepish. Maria, he said, I owe you an apology. I had no idea you were this talented. I feel terrible that you've been working as a waitress when you could have been performing. Maria looked up at Crawford. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I'll always be grateful for that. Well, I don't want to lose you entirely. Crawford said, How about this? Would you be interested in being our regular pianist for special events? We could pay you $1,000 per performance, and you could still pursue your other opportunities. Before Maria could answer, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her mother. The doctor said Dad can come home next week. The treatment worked better than expected. We're so happy. Maria started crying again, but this time they were tears of joy. Everything was changing at once. Her father was getting better, and her career was about to take off in ways she had never imagined. Victoria noticed Maria's emotional reaction to the text message. Good news? She asked gently. Maria explained about her father's illness and how that had led to her giving up her music career to work as a waitress. She told Victoria about the medical bills and how her family had struggled to pay for treatment. That settles it, Victoria said firmly. You're exactly the kind of person our foundation exists to help. Young artists shouldn't have to choose between following their dreams and taking care of their families. We want to change that. The other guests were still gathered around, listening to this conversation. Many of them were moved by Maria's story. These wealthy people were used to getting what they wanted through money and power. But Maria had achieved something beautiful through pure talent and determination. An older woman who owned a chain of hotels approached them. Maria, I heard what Victoria said about her foundation job, and I think it's wonderful. But I also want to make you an offer. My hotels host live music every weekend. I would love to have you perform at our locations. The pay would be excellent, and it would give you more performance experience. A man who ran several art galleries spoke up. One organized classical music concerts in my galleries. They're intimate performances for smaller audiences. Very sophisticated. I think you would be perfect for our next series. Maria looked around at all these successful people who were offering her opportunities. A few hours ago, she had been worried about losing her waitressing job if she made mistakes playing piano. Now she had more job offers than she knew what to do with. Richard Sterling had been quiet during the conversation with Victoria, but now he stepped forward again. Maria, all of these offers are wonderful, but I want to make sure you understand the potential of your talent. With the right management and promotion, you could be performing in major concert halls within a year. You could make recordings that reach millions of people. You could become a household name. Victoria smiled at Richard. She's going to need good management for all of these opportunities. Do you have someone in mind? Actually, I'd like to manage her career myself, Richard sighed. I've been in the music business for 30 years, and I've rarely seen raw talent like this combined with such musical maturity. Maria felt overwhelmed by all the attention and offers. She was grateful, but she also felt like things were moving very fast. This is all amazing, she said, but I need some time to think about everything. This morning I was just a waitress, and now you're talking about recording contracts and concert tours. Victoria nodded understandingly. Of course you need time to think. These are big decisions. But Maria, I want you to know that what happened here tonight was not just a lucky break. This was your talent shining through when you finally got the chance to show it. The evening was winding down, but guests continued to approach Maria throughout the night. Some wanted to compliment her performance. Others wanted to offer her opportunities. A few just wanted to hear her story. By the time the last guest left, Maria had collected 17 business cards and had been invited to audition for 3 different orchestras, perform at 5 different venues, and record with 2 different labels. Crawford approached her as she was gathering her things. Maria, I know you have a lot of new opportunities now, but I hope you'll remember us here at the Grand Palazzo. You saved our biggest event of the year. Mr. Crawford, this job gave me a chance when I needed it most. I won't forget that. And Maria, take the foundation job with Victoria. She's a good person, and that job will let you help other young musicians while still building your own career. As Maria walked to her car, she thought about everything that had happened. When she woke up this morning, her biggest worry was whether she would be able to help Crawford find a replacement pianist. Now she was thinking about which of multiple amazing job offers to accept. She drove home to her small apartment and sat down at her old piano. For the first time in months, she played just for herself, not for customers or audiences. She played the pieces she loved most, feeling grateful for the talent that had been hidden for so long but had finally been allowed to shine. Her phone rang. It was her mother.